it's that time of year when the newspapers are full of articles about what's going on in the House and the Assembly, in the Senate, and what the governor's doing, what the state senator's doing. Everybody's making speeches. It's a really kind of interesting time of year. We've been able to collaborate with some groups that we'll talk about later. That's made that more interesting for us.
Bob, just so you know, the presentation is not being shared any longer. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I am.
Okay.
So do you want it shared?
Oh, you wanted me to? Okay. I didn't
You
know
want
that.
me to share I can do it, but I'll do that right now. Share. So just to refresh your memories, this is our mission and vision. And I'm not going to read them to you, but we say things like every student. We say things like unite, represent, support school counselors. We say things like empowered, which is an advocacy term, and promote student success. And that's important to us. And we try to wrap everything we do in terms of our annual work plan and our strategic plan around this mission and vision. Okay, so what do we know about advocacy? We know that it can be complicated. We know that we know that it can be local. Why doesn't somebody put in the chat, what do you know about advocacy? I'm looking at the slides I was supposed to put in the chat what you know about advocacy. Real quick.
Or you can put in what you think advocacy is and you're not really sure.
Ah, good. Yeah.
And, today we're here and we're gonna cover a couple of things, right? We're gonna cover about what we know about advocacy. We're gonna cover the background on legislative process and funding, and we're gonna cover ways that we as school councils can advocate on the local, state, and national levels. So we want to flesh out kind of what do we think advocacy is? What do you have in your head? Because I know that when I started as advocacy chair, what I thought advocacy was, and then the work we started to do wasn't exactly the same. It had some of the same themes and some of the same stuff, but I was kind of shocked at how much fun it was. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. So I think, we have these concepts or these ideas of what advocacy is, right? No, I could never be. And I think if we look at what we do daily, you're advocates daily, not for ourselves, not for our profession, but we advocate regularly, right? So when we look at those answers that we got in the chat, Bob, we have, it takes time and determination, nothing's easy. Without a voice, you are not heard. It's building relationships. Advocacy or advocating is about standing up for those who can't help themselves. It's work that must be done if we want things changed. We make our voices and opinions heard, fighting for a cause. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. I love that one, Bob. It's a way to represent your concerns, priorities, as someone in a place to make a decision, making your voice and your students' voices heard. And you are the expert when speaking with legislators. And that absolutely 100% is something to always keep in the front of your mind, because it can be intimidating to meet with legislators, but you are the expert. They don't know what we do. And when you're there talking about the work we do and the impact that we have, you're the expert, not them.
I think one of the things that I learned when I first started in this work was that I thought that advocacy and lobbying and things like that were always about you went to visit somebody and you went to visit somebody, you went to visit an assembly person or whatever, and you wanted them to vote for a bill. Here, we are in favor of this bill. Can we have your support? Can we have your sponsorship? Can we have your vote? It turns out a lot of it is just education. It's just education and teaching them what we do. What's a school counselor do? It may lead to asking them to advocate for a particular bill or for a particular proposal that we have, but a lot of it is just purely education. So, and we've had this experience many times, a lot of us on this call, where we've gone in to see a senator or assemblyman and say, and what they know about school counseling is what they remember from 1967 or 1974 or whatever. That's what they remember. And so they don't really know what it looks like these days. And they don't know what state ed regulations are in regard to what we're supposed to be doing. And so a lot of it is, handouts and speaking and educating and letting them know, what the state of play is right now. If that leads to a conversation about a particular bill and so on, that's great, but it doesn't always. That's what I've learned. Yeah, the other thing, and we had it in our notes, is the other thing that I learned is it's a process. It's an event. And we learned this from the PTA. It's all about relationships. And I'm trying to remember who was on the meeting. I think it was Kathy and I and Diana. We were wandering around the Capitol like 2 days before the pandemic closed down the world. And we were visiting offices to do advocacy and education work. And we wandered into the Senator Mayer's office. Senator Mayer is the head of the education committee. And she wasn't there, but her chief of staff, who runs the education committee, her name was Mrs. Shudo. Mrs. Shudo was there, and she met with us. And since nobody was around because of the pandemic, little did we know, she had a lot of time, and she gave us a lot of advice. She talked to us about, maybe you should say it this way, maybe you should say it that way. And that relationship that we began with her led to that she asked us to do Senate testimony in the fall of 2021. That's where that came from, just because of those relationships. And so that's one thing that I learned about it that I should have known, is that it's all about those relationships. I've visited my state assemblyman, and you all have these stories too. I've visited my state assemblyman so many times over the years for so many things, everything from the village park or the town park to school counselor stuff. And he's on the ed committee, Assemblyman Ramos, Phil. It's kind of almost Phil Bob rather than Assemblyman Ramos and Bob. And so, because he's been the assemblyman since they built Islip, I think. And that's the way things happen, is those relationships. And that's one thing that takes time. And that's why we said in our notes that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And it's something that you can be active in, or you can be passive in. It is not, like I'm going to show up today and I'm going to fight for this cause. It's a constant knowledge, a constant involvement, right? So those of you that attend your school board meetings, those of you that attend, whether it be for your school district or for your local community, those of you that go visit legislators, those of you that just kind of keep the knowledge up about the local issues that are going on, right? Advocacy, a big chunk of this is education, is knowing what are the issues on the table and how are they impacting the people that you're working with, how are they impacting yourself, and what do you have to say about that, right? Because that's where it becomes more impassioned, when we feel like there's a cause or something that's happening that's going against the benefit of a group that we represent or a group that we're part of. And now we need somebody to hear what we're saying, and we need action to happen. So you can show up just for the event, but having that constant attendance at different things and just having the knowledge and the information to keep you in the know, that's also advocating. When you think about it as a school counselor, the professional development that you do, that's advocating, getting all those pieces in place. So when we talk about ways that NYSSCA can advocate, because I think it's important to know, especially with current topics, there are things that your professional organization can do for you as a school counselor. And then there are things that you need to do for yourself as a school counselor. There are areas where we can kind of speak to and represent the collective. And then there are areas where we as individual members have to step up and represent our local pieces of that collective to have our voices heard. So one of the first ways that as an organization we advocate is collaborations. So we build coalitions and partnerships with groups with similar goals. We have a close, long-standing relationship with the PTA. They are a powerhouse and changed our game. Being partners with them has not only given us knowledge, it's given us kind of an ally to when they need us, we show up and we help them and support them. And when we need them, they show up and they support us. So when you have issues going on your local levels and you feel that councils aren't being represented the way they need to be, or students aren't getting what they need, the PTA is an amazing group to partner with. We also have partnerships with Ed Trust, Mahaney's, Degrees New York. We have a partnership with the New York State Bill and Melinda Gates Fund. A lot of the work that we're doing is coming out of a grant that we received from them. And that has enabled us to do more of the activities that help educate the masses on how do we make a difference, how do we impact, as well as focus our efforts on specific tasks and create partnerships that have given us momentum in the fields of advocacy. You have lobbying and informing legislators, right? So that's the typical thing when we think of advocacy on a political level, we always think legislators, right? And that's meeting with them, sending emails. If you all remember a couple months ago in October, we had set out a Voter Voice platform where you put in your information and that sent a letter about a cause that we were fighting for to give them some knowledge and information about why school councils were worried about it, why school councils should be included. So that Voter Voice platform gave you an easy access to just kind of shoot out an email to your local legislators. We've written letters in the past. We've had letters published in papers. We've had letters to the editor. So we've done position statements. A lot of times when we meet with legislators, there's handouts that we'll share with you throughout this workshop and you'll have access to on our website. So when you do visit, you can use that information to share with legislators and educate them on what it is we do, why our work is so important. Media activities, again, a letter to the editors, social media campaigns. Many of you saw on social media, we had campaigns all throughout National School Councils Week. There are campaigns that go out for advocacy. There are things that will go out on specific issues. The world is all about social media now. So kind of connecting there. We attend the Caucus Day, Black Puerto Rican and Asian Caucus. We have been at that for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years. We've attended it in person and we've attended it virtually. Thank you, Kathy. 5. I misspoke. I appreciate your correction. We've done it in person and we've done it virtually. Definitely cooler in person than virtually. And thankfully this year we were back in person. So that's a great weekend to be with legislators and kind of make those connections, make those relationships. Because think about it when you're working with a student. When something happens with it, when there's a crisis, if you have a relationship with that family, you are so much more impactful when you have to have a conversation about what's going on than if it's the first time you call them in your office and you say, so let's talk about what's going on. They look at you like, who are you? Right? So having that ongoing relationship, that connection, that partnership, being involved in these activities as an organization, we're doing that for school councils across the state of New York. We definitely need help with it. So if you're here and you're not part of the committee, we'd love to have you because the more people we have, the more relationships we can build. But that's that constant. That's that marathon, right? Not the sprint. That's the culture, not just the event. When we then go to continue that, we got community activities. Bob, you can go to the next slide.
I just wanted to add a little bit. We do tables at New York State Council of School Superintendents, School Boards Association, PTA, ACAC, New York State ACAC. We do info tables there with all the handout info that we have. And after you've done them for a couple of years, the same kind of people keep wandering by, and you meet new people each time you do it. as well as refreshing relationships with people who, oh, I was here last year. What do you got? Sometimes they just stop by for the candy, which is okay. We always have candy. And so the ability to do those tables has been a really positive for us to be able, because sometimes the tables are kind of expensive. And so we're able to do those through the grant we've gotten. Okay, next slide.
So think about your local community, things that go on. There are listening forums, there are town halls, there's different trainings, there's professional development. You can visit your legislator at home. You don't have to trek up to Albany. I mean, you can, it's definitely more fun going up to Albany, being at the Capitol, kind of doing that activity, but you can meet with them at home. All of your conferences, your local school council associations, your regional conferences, attending NYSSCA, NYSSCA, we're at those, as Bob said, we get tables at those events, and that's the school boards and the superintendents, because those are the key stakeholders that need to be aware of the work that we do and the importance of that work. Again, it's great to show up in the moment of whatever's happening, but 9 times out of 10, it's already been decided before we get there. So I'm going to say a dirty word right now, the healthcare worker bonus. There were initial conversations about that in August, right? We now know about it in November, and as we've been kind of advocating for us to be included in that, there were conversations and things that went on about that back in August that we're now finding out about. Being at that table, as Bob put in the chat, right? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Having those relationships, those connections, allow you to be part of the initial conversation when they say, let's get those group of key stakeholders in our community involved in this thing we're going to do. Let's get their feedback. Let's hear what they have to say about it. We need to be present. We need to be out there. We need to be one of those people that they think about, hey, let's pull the school councils in and get their feedback as well, so that we're part of the discussion, not fighting the back end of it to be included after the discussion's been had. And you will find that a lot of things with advocating in public policy, there are prior conversations, and then it comes out. And at that point, decisions have been made. Oftentimes, it's a little too late. And yes, we are fighting and we're hoping to kind of and we're getting momentum to change it, but it's much easier if you're at the beginning part of that. So by being at those community activities, being connected and having those relationships on a community level, on a grassroots level, if there are things that your schools are getting, like we look at the recovery funds, right? Money came in, schools were told, here's your money, you have to figure out how you're using it, you need to write this up. They had to call key stakeholders in to have conversations about what should we do with this. If you are somebody in your district, and I say this because for us working in districts, it gets a little dicey, right? Because there's a view you can have in the district you work in, and then there's a view you can have in the district you live in, right? So maybe we can't be a part of the community in the district that we work in and freely share our opinions, but you absolutely can be a part of the committee in the district that you live in and share your 100% free opinion of what should be done with those monies or what supports are needed for the students in your district. Maybe a little bit more freely without having to worry about being a representative of the district that you're working for, right? But being involved in those meetings and those conversations. So doing presentations at school board meetings as an employee, so you can update what they're doing, but maybe showing up at your local board meeting and asking questions about the things that the board's putting into place or decisions that are being made. Being a member of the PTA at the district that you work in, right? Because those relationships are important for us professionally when we need the support of parents. Having that connection is key. Every PTA that I've ever worked in any district, I've always been at their meetings. I've always had a connection with them because if I need them, they're a powerful group. But also in your home district, right? You don't have to have a student in school to be a member of the PTA. I know we think as you grow up and you say, oh, my kids are growing up and I'm going to get involved. You can always remain a member of that PTA. You probably don't want to go to the bake sales, right? Or sit on the actual committee, but you definitely can be a part of the conversation and part of the advocacy efforts, making sure that the monies that are being filtered to the schools are being used appropriately and for all students and for appropriate things. As an employee, be at union meetings, Let your voice be heard. You are a member of that union just as much as every teacher and everybody else. If we don't show up, if we don't arrive, if we don't let our voices be heard, it's easy to forget about us. It's easy to say, they're a small group. We don't necessarily have to weigh in their opinion as much, right? And I'm not saying that is what's happening, but if you're not there, again, Bob's statement, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That's a very true fact. And we have found that out more and more as we've done advocacy initiatives. It is better to be part of those conversations. It is better to be involved. You're giving up your time, right? You're giving up a weeknight to show up at a board meeting. You're giving up logging on to a virtual meeting, but you're gaining so much more in those relationships.
One of the things that I've heard and always noticed about school counselors is we're not great at beating our own drums. We're not great about, talking about what we do, because so much of what we do is, it's not confidential, but it's sort of private. You're teaching a class, you're talking to a kid. It's not something you're going to run out in the hallway and say, guess what I just did? It's not something you can report, like how many kids passed the chemistry regents exam and so on and so on. So we're learning to be more vocal about what's important to us in what we're doing, and we do that in a lot of ways through data and stuff, which is another presentation. But there's a lot of different ways for us to show our worth and show our value in schools. That local presence is so important. It's so important. Find out what's going on in your local district. I'm just as guilty as the next person. I'm not really sure. I think I know more about the districts around me in regard to their school counseling program than I do to the district I live in. I know more about the Brentwood program because it's very good. There's always been a strong program in Brentwood. I don't know so much about Central Islip where I live. That might be your case too. That might be wrong for me, but there's a lot of important things. One of the things that is important to learn in any school, the one you work or the one where you live, is where are the power centers? Is it the SEPTA? Is it the special ed PTA? In South Huntington, where I worked, it was. Is it the band parents? Is it the theater parents? It's different in every district. Find out who's a power in those districts, and as you're assembling your I'm going to say another dirty word. And as you're assembling your advisory group, make sure you got some of the power parents on it, and the power group people on it. Not every school district's got an advisory group yet, but it'll happen.
And Bob, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because we talk about the regs that we have as school counselors, that it took however many years, right? They hadn't been changed since 1977, 78. We got them changed. There was a lot of work to do that. They're not being implemented with fidelity. And yes, COVID kind of came in and blew that all up, right? As a director of a large district, I was not going to be concerned about my comprehensive school counseling plan being on my district website. I was going to be worried about the actual work we were doing, right? That paperwork versus what you're doing. But that advocacy board is key. If you have that group of stakeholders in your community that you're reporting to as an employee, right? You're giving that report, you're getting that feedback, you're creating programs that meet the needs of all students based on feedback from your community, and you're meeting regularly. When things pop up, it's not even a question, because you have a group right there of cheerleaders to say to you, or to say to the people outside, no, wait, look at what they do. They are a key part of our children. That's why our children are successful. Given what's going on with COVID, and given the backlash of COVID, now more than ever, I think people are aware of the impact that our counseling services have on all students when it comes to academic achievement, attendance, social, emotional, just feelings towards the building. The impact that we have with the programs that we do is more invaluable now than it's ever been, because of what we've been through, and the sense that people are starting to see it. Why not get on those coattails and now let's develop those things we should have been doing that we aren't necessarily doing. Let's put those things into practice in our districts, right? Let's get those advisory boards if you don't have them. Let's make sure your comprehensive plan is up if it's not. Let's make sure that our school boards and our administrators are aware of the things that as a state we are supposed to be doing, that makes sure the community is aware of the job we do and gives us the forum and the ability to be impactful in the lives of our students. So when we talk about our advocacy goals and the things that we've been working towards, part of this comes from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant. We have to set out certain goals. Part of this comes from the work plan that we've always had as an organization, right? And we say these are things we're going to do as an organization for the profession. These are goals that we're going to work towards throughout the state of New York and kind of see a change in and have an impact in. So the first one is equitable access to counselors. How many of your districts have elementary school counselors? They pop it in the chat. James is like so, right? A little bit. It's not the same across the state. And look, I'm gonna be the first to say that my district put in a waiver. They were the first district to put in a waiver not to have to do elementary school counselors. I have 3 elementary districts that feed into my high school district. So, when we talk about equitable access, and they say, oh, well, there's a counselor they can talk to or they can check in with, right? So for those of you that have them, great job, right? For those of us that don't, what do we need to start doing to make sure that they understand the importance of it and that we can get them there? Right? Very hard to check in with anybody when you're there 1 day a week.
So we were doing the UFT conference last Saturday, and I was surprised how many elementary counselors introduced themselves to Marjorie and I, who were at the table. What building do you work in? Oh, PS, whatever. And I was pleasantly surprised that New York City is making an effort to hire school elementary counselors. One of the things that our Bill and Melinda Gates grant has done is this helped us refine our goals. Like we've said stuff like we should have an elementary counselor in every building. But if you say that in grant language, that's equitable access to counselors. So it's helped us refine our goals, and it's helped us narrow our focus a little bit. Foundational courses. You'd be surprised to learn that not every school has phys ed. Not every school has art programs. Not every school has technology programs and so on. They're required by the state. As you know, if you work in a middle school, you've got to do so much home and careers, you got to do so much tech, you got to do so much this and that, health. Not every school does that. So that's what the foundational courses is. It might sound it's like, what? Where's that? But it's not the case. And then equitable access to advanced coursework such as advanced placement, IB, dual enrollment, early college, high school. And we say that in our proposals in a slightly different way, but it's that every kid in the state should have that access, whether they're in New York City or Buffalo or Brockport. They should have access to programs, the various programs. And there's a big move at state ed, as well as the Board of Regents, in regard to these programs, to find a way. Okay, your school's too small to have AP biology. Okay, maybe you can partner with the district next to you. Maybe you can work with your BOCES and so on to make that happen. Kelly, I'm watching the time a little bit. Kim's on.
Well, Kim's with us, so
yeah. You want to finish this up after Kim?
I mean, we're basically done. So, and we talk about this. These are the goals, and as we do have as I talked before about collaborations and the importance of collaborating. We have created a strong partnership with the PTA. They have taught us, I don't even know a word to describe the things that we've learned from them. The passion, the power, don't mess with parents, right? And I always knew that as a counselor, right? Your parent relationships are important, but when I look at them as a force that we sit on trainings and just workshops with them, and we've learned from them the lengths that they go to fight to make sure that all students are heard and all students are seen and all students get what they need. Is inspiring. It's amazing. And it's a bunch of parents who are doing 50 million things and juggling 50 million things, but yet they're still up there fighting for every kid, not just their kid. It's inspiring to watch, and it gives hope that as a school counselor saying, okay, we're fighting for every kid in the state of New York. How are we going to do this? We have been blessed to have a relationship with the PTA, and Kim Basiak is here to kind of share some of those tips that they have of just, doing kind of what we do, what's natural. So Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. So I'll apologize ahead of time. My son, in order to keep him quiet, is above me and he's stimming like no one's business. So you hear some pounding from his ball above me. So
that's okay.
So thank you for having me. So I appreciate it. I'm glad that I was able to actually come today. I tried to figure out, I wasn't sure, Bob, what the slides were that you just had on there. So, because I'm just for my own notes, I apologize. I just lost my slides. Here we go. Okay. I got it.
Okay.
So yeah, just to kind of go through it, Kelly, I was listening to the things that you were saying. It's a lot of the stuff that I usually say too, which is great. I mean, realistically, a lot of people, when they hear the word advocate, they get nervous immediately. They're like, oh, no, I can't. That's not me. I don't do this. And I'm not an advocate. Like they usually think of the loud people. I'm an advocate. The loud people in the district that are constantly like questioning everything and paying attention and everything. Anyone who has a passion on anything can be an advocate. So it's just the idea of speaking up and letting your voices be heard. And especially for counselors, that is so huge because I'll be honest, a lot of people don't realize the full extent of what counselors do within our schools. I'll be honest, I didn't know the full extent until I looked during budget time one year and saw just exactly how much the counselors do. And I remember calling my son's counselor at the time going, am I reading this the correct way? Like, this is what you guys do? And so, thank you. And it was insane. So when you're advocating, Bob, if you can, thanks. Just like Kelly was saying before, like who should be included? Whenever you're advocating for something or you're trying to just get more information, you want to make sure that the school staff are part of it. So your counselors, your teachers, your admins. And I will be the first to say, as a Board of Education member, as a parent, as a PTA officer, it doesn't always work. So when you're able to just have a conversation with your admin and have them advocate for you. So I'll just say that ahead. In the perfect world, yes, that happens. But you want your families to know what's going on, your students, especially your high school students, the students that you are. Well, I have to say, we don't have elementary counselors in our district. So I was kind of writing notes going, okay, equitable access. Got it. So elementary. But you want your students involved. I mean, that's one thing. The students know what's going on. They know who's there for them. So that would be huge to have them involved. So what we usually do in PTA, we call it the cycle of advocacy, where we at the end of the day are a grassroots organization where we advocate for every child. And part of advocating for every child is advocating for you, the counselors, because you're in the trenches every day. You're doing the work. So that's our job. So what we tell people, and this is what all of you, like with your advocacy, I would suggest it works for you too. Mail your school calendar to your legislators, just attach a note, because a lot of times they will, like if they're a local, they might show up to certain things. Call them, ask them to, like, if you have any meetings or things like that, or even a PTA meeting. If you're going to go to a PTA meeting and talk about the goals or things like that, just say, look, you'd be more than welcome. Ask your principal and teachers to have meetings with the PTA leaders, because realistically, the PTA leaders in your district, I feel like I know everything about everything. And it started with PTA because people come up to you and they're like, oh, did you know this was going on? Or did you know this was going on? We're also in the buildings and you're working with our kids. So of course we have your back. So, and appoint an advocacy committee in the fall. Like I was listening that some of you in districts may not have an advocacy committee. Do that. I think that's great to do. I think it gives more people a voice. So Bob, am I able to switch
I think so.
thing or, okay. Okay, it's been a while since I've done this, so
I got it.
I'm gonna have you do it, sorry. Okay. So what we suggest through PTA is we have advocacy communications. They come out all the time. So sign up for those because it'll tell you the huge points within our schools right now. And we'll have, like, especially this month, we've had, okay, mental health help, send your legislators a note to support this, support this. It gets your name out there. And I can say we have actually been asked by legislators before on certain topics to stop sending emails because we have bombarded them so many times because our members just send and send and send. So a lot of people think, oh, it's just a link. It works. They are seeing all of this. So present your basic policy, convention, resolutions and bylaws changes. Your local PTAs have bylaws, they have resolutions. A lot of our resolutions and our points of interest are things that affect you as teachers and as counselors, where it would be good to know, because this really, even with the bake sales and all of that stuff, at the end of the day, we advocate. That's our job. And I think that's hard because PTA tends to have a reputation of like the cliquey groups, because admittedly, the first time I ever went to a meeting, I thought that's what it was. We advocate. So start planning a local spring advocacy ledge session. So if you have any type of parent group in your district, as a counselor, approach them, say, look, you know what, ahead of everything, is there any way that we could do this together? So one example I gave, we did a traffic safety event. So we were able to get information out. Okay, Bob? Thank you. Okay, so in November, New York State PTA has an annual business meeting. I love this meeting because it's convention, it's the business of PTA. It's where we make our resolutions, where we're really doing the grassroots advocacy, we're getting the work done. So after we leave and we're all nice and refreshed and excited, we update our advocacy action plans. We go back to the school, and a lot of times, if we're talking about, for example, mental health, we'll go back to our schools and we'll talk to our counselors and our social workers, and we'll say, look, what's important to you? What are you seeing? What can we advocate for you? And then we start to email legislators. We talk amongst ourselves with it. Also around that time, the ECB, Educational Conference Board, budget recommendations are released. Vote on election day. And it kills me that I put this in the slide, but so many times I hear so many people say, oh, well, I didn't really vote. It doesn't make a difference. Have your voice heard. Okay. Okay, just in case people didn't know what the Educational Conference Board is, we're comprised of the Association of School Business Officials, Conference of Big Five, New York State Council of School Superintendents, New York State PTA, New York State School Boards Association, NYSSCA, and the School Admins Association. So we all get to, I'm one of the PTA members on the ECB. So we get together monthly and we discuss what's important within all the different groups, and we as a whole are able to advocate as the ECB. Okay. Okay, so December, send your legislators, your elected officials, a card and just say, I'm the counselor at this school, or just make your voice known. Contact local media if your PTAs are doing anything, and PTAs are okay with that, because a lot of the times when they're doing things, I know it's crazy when people think, okay, well, if they're doing something with the holidays or whatever, and we're contacting the press, it helps when you're getting that out there, because then as the advocacy season comes up and they start to see the names, they're like, oh, that was the unit that was on the news for doing this, or I read about this unit doing this. And it just kind of, it helps that connection. So invite a legislator or some local business people to PTA meetings or any meetings. Like even if you're able to, if you have advocacy groups, committees within your schools, invite them in to let them know what's going on. And I always say this to all my kids, teachers, counselors, everything, take a break. When you have that December break, stare at a wall, like just breathe. Don't do anything. You guys earned it. Take a break. Remember how amazing you are in what you've been doing. So make sure to get your rest. Okay, the next one. Okay, that's me. I was advocating for myself. I stole my sister's parking space at her company. She's president of a company. I went in for the day, replaced my name with hers. I advocated for parking. So in January, you're going to mail or email any budgets. Well, we get the mail, I should say, from Kyle Belakapitsky, our executive director first, because she'll do this whole breakdown of the budget analysis. And then when we get that, we send it to our PTAs, send that off as a member, send it off to your legislators and say, okay, look, this is what's important. Like even highlight something like, okay, see where with mental health services, with counseling services. I'll be honest, just because I'm thinking about it right now, most parents have no idea about the 250 students to one counselor ratio. They have absolutely no clue. And until I brought it up in our district that we were 266 to 1, they had no idea. Like they don't, it's not like people share that openly. And I think sometimes in certain districts, the admins don't want that shared. But even just by connecting with your PTAs and saying, look, just to give you an idea, these are the ratios. This is how many students I have. This is what's going on. We need to know that kind of stuff. Okay, get together with your PTAs and invite local legislators. And then if you want to, we have something at New York State PTA, our resolutions that you're able to write. If you want to forward a resolution on something, start planning on it, contact your PTA, because a lot of the resolutions have actually over the years been pushed to law. Okay, the next one. Now in February, actually this year it was early March, but we have a legislation summit like you guys do. So we email in the New York State PTA budget testimony. So Kyle Belakapitsky again goes and she makes a statement. We get it in writing. And what we've done over years past is we'll email that to our local legislators and just write a note saying, look, in, for example, our school district, this is extremely important to us. We have kids who aren't getting this, this, and this, or we need supports for this. So it's an easier way, instead of having to recreate the wheel, of having that voice that stands behind all the members in New York State, highlighting it, saying, look, this is what's going on and this is what our district needs. So the New York State PTA Action Center, that's what I was talking about earlier with the email. When you sign up for the emails, especially in February and March, we get them weekly where they have us sending off emails to legislators. Okay, this is what we're advocating for. And they get them. They take notice, they get them, and it does make a difference. So the ECB outlines the state budget recommendations, and that moves forward as well. Okay. March, we have National Legend Conference. We just had that on March 7th. I was actually one of the speakers this year, and it was amazing just to be able to reach a national level with so many things going on. But it's nice to hear from other states what's going on as well. And it gives you, it makes you feel like you're not alone in the fight, because a lot of times when you're within your own district, you feel like you're just kind of in your own office, in your own space. And it's nice to feel like you have so many other voices behind you. So I personally, I always tell people to participate in lobby days if you're able to do it. The first time I ever went, I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified. I remember standing in the Capitol. I'm like, oh my God, I have to say words to them. And I had my sheets and everything. And after the first one was under my belt, it was my most favorite thing in the world to do. because you're there and you have an audience to do something for the students and for the teachers and the staff and the counselors. And it was such a tremendous privilege to be a voice for so many people. So if any of you ever get that opportunity to speak to your elected officials, take it. Like, absolutely. If you think they don't know, they know, they pay attention, and even just follow up after. I've sent a card before saying, thank you very much for meeting when we spoke about such and such. And they do remember. And if you do go to your local lobby days, send out a press release, like let it be known that, look, you have a voice and you're doing this for everyone. Okay. So April and May, if you decide to do a resolution, that's when you would present it to New York State PTA and you would submit it. So the legislators are usually in the office most of April. Try to invite them to an event. Again, if not for any other reason than it helps when they physically see it. It helps when, I always say to my kids, they've got to feel the pain. They've got to feel vested. And you want them to see exactly, like when you go to someone's office and you're talking to them about what's important, that helps. But when they actually come to a school or come to an event and they see the families and they see the kids affected and you're able to have a conversation, they remember that. Like, they really remember that, and it makes a big difference. We also have a national PTA convention in June. So we always tell people, because anybody is invited to that, to think about that. So May, you're going to send your legislators any relevant school budget information. So we've sent before just some highlighted things like, look, this is important. This is going on in our district. This is what we need. If there are any, we have regional PTAs. A lot of times we'll have advocacy events. We'll go over how to decipher your budget, what's important. Also, I've seen some districts who do this so well, do a get out to vote drive for school budget, because we've all seen, and if you haven't seen this, I am so happy for your district. But a lot of people think, oh, it's only a school budget. It's not a big deal. I don't have to go out. If the same people go out, my voice isn't going to be heard. Try to get people out to vote. Try to get them to understand. Like, even, for example, a lot of seniors, at least I'm in the Guilderland School District, a lot of seniors have fixed income. And if they don't see what's going on in the buildings anymore, invite them in for a tour of the buildings. Have a day where maybe you have them in for lunch to the buildings and they can read to the elementary school children, or they can see the programs. But a lot of the time when you're not fully part of the school, when your kids aren't in school anymore, you don't get to see exactly where that budget goes. So even part of the get out to vote is getting them within your schools to see exactly what's going on, because they're still part of your community. And again, vote on school budget day. My kids used to, this was just automatic, where since the kids were like old enough to speak, they knew, okay, it's school budget day, we're going to vote. Like, I would take them in with me, we got them excited early on. School budget day is a big deal. Okay. Now, in the summer months, it tends to be a little slow. So PTA, we tend to go back a little bit, but that's kind of more of where we're brainstorming a lot too, where you take that collective breath and you're able to actually just be and think about, okay, you know what? This is what happened last year. This is what I want to do for next year. So at least in PTA, we have our national convention. I'm sure most districts do this already, but invite your legislators to graduation. So a lot of them already do that anyways. For the few that don't, we highly recommend this so they can see that these kids, they succeeded. They got to the finish line. We should all be celebrating that. So a lot of times we have end of session issues. So if we do, at least for New York State PTA, we send out alerts, because a lot of times we're kind of in that end of the school year and we forget. And of course, we have a New York State Summer Leadership Conference. So we tell people all are welcome to attend. We go through a bunch of different things. July, August, same thing. The summer leadership, start planning for next year's advocacy. And I'm not saying spend your whole entire summer like going, okay, this is what we're going to do and making a plan. But every once in a while, just kind of sit and think, all right, this is what I saw as a day-to-day in the building as a counselor. It would be helpful maybe if maybe at the beginning of the year, I contact PTA and we ask, even one thing that I would suggest is, as a counselor, if you have a parent group at all, PTA, PTO, whatever they call themselves, approach them and say, look, I'd really like to speak at one of your meetings just to let parents know exactly what we're doing in the buildings. Because again, I'm in the buildings all the time. I'm very involved with all of this. So I know, but a lot of parents, until you start bringing it up and you're like, do you know the numbers? Do you know the stats? Do you know what they really do? Most parents don't know what you do, and they should know exactly. And just brainstorm any out of the box way to get with policymakers and get their attention. That first year I brought Hershey bars and gave Hershey bars out to everybody. And they just remembered me as the lady with the chocolate. So just anything different. Okay. Okay. If you ever want to know, and I put yours down as well, where we stand for New York State PTA, then I put our link over here. It'll go through all of our position papers, where we stand with everything. But even if you just go to nyspta.org, it's pretty user-friendly. You'll be able to go through, because you have a lot of membership standing behind those position papers and those resolutions, and that actually means something. Okay. I always put this in everything I do because I believe this wholeheartedly. In my world, I will fight for my child and every child fighting a battle. I will make their voices heard from the mountaintops. I will educate and bring awareness for these true warriors. I'm the voice of an advocate. In our world, we are the voice. And I know that's so corny, but I really genuinely believe that as even a parent, as a Board of Ed member, as a PTA representative, my job is to advocate not just for my kids, but every single student within our district and within other districts, because there are parents and families that can't get in or don't know how to advocate. And that's our job, to make sure no matter what, every single student is getting what they need. And that comes down to advocating for you guys as counselors as well. So it's not, when I talk about in PTA advocating for every child, it's not strictly just about the student, but it's about the people in the trenches who are fighting and working for our kids. And that's you guys. That's absolutely you guys. And a lot of times with school counselors, you don't hear about that. You'll hear about the school social workers. You'll hear about a bunch of different things, but the counselors just seem to be like oh, there's a counselor. Yeah. And then it just gets dropped. Make your voices heard. Let people know you're there and tell them what you do. Tell them how involved you are. Even something small, like my son used to leave his lunch in the refrigerator at the counselor's office every day. I remember going into school and the counselors are like, oh, he doesn't do that anymore. And I've missed seeing him and saying hello every morning. And it's just something small like that. It was just, I don't know. It's a huge thing. Okay. Now, these are my whys. So on the left side, my son Max in the middle, who had just graduated, my daughter Abby, and my son Owen. On the right is my son Alex, the guy stimming upstairs. So those are my why. That's how I started. That's why way back when I went to my first PTA meeting, because I was so excited that I had a babysitter on Tuesday nights and there were adults somewhere else. That's exactly how I started. I saw it on the school billboard, that PTA meeting, and I thought, oh, grown-ups. And that's how I started. And I never looked back. It was about every kid, but my why brought me into that meeting. Okay. And if you saw this, because I know I did a lot of these slides last year, it takes a village and you're part of that village. And what you're seeing in this picture here, and I might tear up, so I apologize, is my son Max and his school counselor, Candace Falarno. And Candace is why my son graduated. That woman is the reason, and you can see the smile on my son's face. And I was so blessed to be able to see that picture and get that picture, because she is the reason that my son walked that stage that day. She is the one that went through numerous phone calls, that would shut things down and talk to my son when he needed something, and would work with the teachers. And I can't even say enough. And now Candace has my other son, Alex, and that poor woman had to call me and tell me that the after high school transition for my son within one call was completely changed. And as a parent of a child with autism, when you have a plan for after school and that plan goes, it was devastating. And she handled it unbelievably well. She knew she should have been the person to call me, which was just as well. We got him set, we got him moving, but and that's just one person. And that's why it just amazes me when I think about it. That's just one person. And she doesn't do it because I'm involved. She doesn't do it because I'm on the board of ed or anything. She does it because she's a phenomenal woman and just cares and does her job and wants the students to succeed. And that's all of you that are on this call. You're here because you're the same way. You want our kids to succeed and you want them to do well. And you all probably have stories like this where you have that student that just, I hope you're told every day how appreciated you are, because this woman pretty much knows that there's like a property of Candace tattoo somewhere on me, because I owe her huge. She always goes above and beyond, but never doubt, like when you're at school and you're having one of those days that's just really hard and you're feeling like the admins aren't getting it and you're not being supported and you're just overworked and pushed, please, please don't forget that somewhere there's a student that's walking around and they're a little bit happier because you exist. And I mean that with everything in me, because the smile right there on my son just kind of tells you a lot. Like, that woman is the reason he graduated. So sorry, now that I teared up, does anyone have any questions?
You guys, you can unmute if you want to ask a question.
Okay.
Kim, thank you so much for joining us, as always.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Your love for us is felt. Your expertise is appreciated. And we really appreciate every time you come and share with us.
So no, thank you. Because I mean, seriously, and I don't just say this, don't forget what rock stars you are. Like, just, you're so incredibly important to our kids. And I just thank you so much for as I'm tearing up again. So I'm going to walk out. My son's like, why are you crying? But yeah, I mean, don't forget how amazing you guys are. And as a parent who's been in the trenches with, I have 4 children altogether. So the parent who's been in the trenches with that, you do so much and you deserve to be heard, and you deserve, your positions deserve to be appreciated, and don't feel like you're just in the background. Like, make yourselves heard and go to your parent groups, and they're your voice too. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
just as a quick follow-up, PTA has several memorandums of support or issues that they make as a priority each year. And there's 3 this year, and one of them is student mental health, our highest priority. These have always been their highest priority, and they've got a bunch of statistics on it. I'll share it later with you, but there's a bunch of statistics that they accomplished by doing a survey of parents in the fall. And it says 81% of the respondents felt anxiety was the most important mental health issue facing their students. And so they've got all the statistics. They also note at the bottom, as I read through it, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. They're gonna create a new New York State mental health, PTA mental health task force, led by PTA president, past president Dana Platten. And they're working with us, school counselors, New York State School Counselors Association, Mahaney's, and other stakeholders. So it's kind of cool to be at that table. And I think that it shows that our relationship is very strong.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sorry to add this, but don't forget about mental health for yourselves as well. I'm sorry, we just had a professional development day in our district, and it always turns my stomach when I see that they do something for the teachers and the staff on how to take care of yourself. And I always think, okay, maybe make their jobs a little bit easier and give them the supports they need instead of telling them to take a shower. So it just, remember to advocate for yourselves as well on that. So it's just one of those things that I always, every time I see it, it just turns my stomach because I'm like, get a clue. But no, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, at this point, we're going to take like a 5-minute break if you want to get up, refresh your coffee, use the bathroom, stretch, check in on your families. And we will be back here at
Set a timer.
10:40.
Okay.
Melissa
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
the minute you started to wipe your eyes, I went, oh my God, here I go.
Yeah.
Well,
You're such an emotional pussycat. I love you.
Oh my God, it's that genetic Italian stuff.
know.
It
I know.
just goes. But
Yeah.
is Kim gone?
I think so. I think she.
Yeah,
We
probably.
tell you, don't allow her to speak without telling everybody to get tissues first. And it's just, she speaks and it just brings up, you think
Yeah,
of
she's
every
great.
single kid. Her son is every single kid, and the little touches every day, everything you're doing. And, you just get that stupidness coming at you from administration, or you get a stupid comment and you just feel so beat down,
Yeah.
and it's a lot. So it was very, you're listening to her and you're feeling her experience and you're like, God bless and keep going. But then you're feeling your piece of, thank God she's speaking, because I need that. I need to hear that because I never hear it. I'm always in my office saying to parents when they're like, oh, this teacher, I said, how many times a day am I telling a parent, write a letter to the,
Right.
the Board of Ed, write a letter. They get so many complaints. I can't tell you how many silly, stupid things that aren't valid teachers are getting. Send a letter. I'm always saying that, but I'm never saying it, I'm not going to say it for myself. Can you send a letter for me? So it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear. Sorry, I'm going to take my picture off.
Don't be sorry at all, by all means. Thank you for sharing.
Now,
I also want to take a minute to just, because I'm not sure, I know some of you were at our conference, and one of the collaborations that I don't want to say is new, but it's kind of been revisited and strengthened is our relationship with the School Social Worker Association, the School Psychologist Association, and the School Nurses Association. So I want to take time to thank the members of those associations that have joined us today. And have thanked them for joining our advocacy efforts. And as we get through the workshop, you'll see some of the position statements or propositions that we're kind of bringing to legislators are this concept of the collective care team, and the fact that, we each have an individual piece that we bring to the table. And when we work collaboratively and together, we're able to meet the needs of all students, right? And we each have those expertise. Thank you, Wendy. I know Jerry's here also. I'm not sure who else is here from those associations, I think. But I do want to call the attention, and I know that you guys feel this way as school counselors on the call. I could not do my job in a building without the support and team membership of school social workers, school psychologists, and school nurses. The things that we all bring to the table with our skill sets are integral for the success of students, help make administrators and teachers see the importance of acknowledging things that kids are going through. They don't all get us when we talk. And I think some teachers need to hear from a medical perspective, and the nurse is able to get through. Sometimes it's a social worker that's able to kind of crack the core of that teacher who says, but no, there's assignments and they're supposed to just do them. Or the school psychologist that's able to kind of tap in. And I think too often we get lost in the shuffle of the day. And it's important to realize that as a unit, we are so much stronger together. And this relationship is continuing to grow. We're taking our show on the road, and we're going to be putting in proposals to NYSSCA and NYSSCA to present on this concept of a collective care team, and that it is not okay to just have one of us or some of us. You need to have all of us. For the best experience for all students, you need to have all of us in every school. And we need to have each other to be able to be our best selves. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for the work that you also do for our students to help them be successful. I know that I rely on all of you in my day-to-day, as I'm sure the other counselors on the call do as well. If you didn't take a break yet, take a break. And we'll be back at in like 2 minutes at 10:40 to kind of continue with our workshop.
Kelly, can I just add, this is
Absolutely.
Wendy.
Go
I don't know the person's name that was talking about how it's difficult to ask for someone to, write a letter on our behalf. But I just want to share a little story. When one of my very first districts that I worked for, every year they were threatening to cut social workers because they had to cut the budget. And so we did the difficult thing and we asked families, would you speak on our behalf? And we were at a board meeting, actually two quick stories. One story, we were at a board meeting and they always do the pledge as the board meeting starts. And one of which one of the board members had asked for a moment of silence after the pledge. And they were basically arguing with each other about, are we going to get a moment of silence? And I turned to my colleague and I'm like, we're doomed. They can't even agree on a moment of silence. That's it, we're done. But then we had our families speak. And so we had first the baseball coach spoke about how they needed new uniforms. And he was going on and on about the reason why they need new uniforms. And then one of our families got up and told their story and told what we did to help them. And I swear to you that baseball coach got up after they were done talking and said, forget the new uniforms, give our money to the social workers. It was really very powerful. And, and it is very hard to reach out and ask for people to help us because we're so used to helping others. But we have to, that's what advocacy is all about too, right? Is helping yourself and speaking up for what you do and making sure people, reach back out when the time is needed.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the why.
Stories.
That's the why. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on. We're going to really kind of talk about developing that why, especially when you speak with legislators and when you're advocating for yourself and you're speaking to your local superintendents and principals and boards. The why is such an important piece of what we do, right? And it's the thing that kind of reminds us all what this is about. So Wendy, thank you so much for sharing. And I thank all of you again for being here on your Saturday morning. It's always a pleasure to have Kim speak with us. And again, we are better together. We're better together with our social workers, our psychologists, our school nurses, as well as the PTA and any other kind of relationships we can make to kind of collaborate in those advocacy efforts, right? So when we talk about our goals, some of the things that we've kind of come up with this year, and I think, Bob, what I might do, I think I'm going to end up pulling, I got to see what I even have before I just kind of, I'm going to pull the screen because I want to put up,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to take your screen and I'm going to go to this because I think that's what I want to share.
There you go.
I need to move this. Oh, and of course my toolbar is down. Give me a second for it to go away so I can actually pull up what I want to pull up. Back. 1 second. Technology, gotta love it, right? So the first one we're going to talk about is the support for implementation of the New York State Ed Commissioner's regulation, which that is.
We should charge extra for the puppies who come to the meetings.
I know, right? Beautiful dog, Melissa.
James.
And I know that James had his dog also.
I see the dog.
All right, so let's do this. I'm going back to this. I'm gonna share this. And it's still loading, but hopefully it'll be fully loaded by the time I'm sharing with you guys. Okay, so the first ask that we have up here is the full implementation of the regulations. So we have our regulations. We, again, you know, I spoke about it a little bit earlier. The regs were changed, and we have some of the best regs. When we go to the NYSSCA conventions and we go to LDI, which is the Leadership Development Institute, at the beginning of the American School Counselor Association conference each year, we have some of the strongest regulations around for school counselors, but they're not done with fidelity, right? They're not being done the way they should be. So in this, and this one is kind of like a, you know, when we talk about things you're going to fight for and things you're going to advocate for, this one's kind of like a pipe dream solution, right? So the hope is that we would love, and NYSSCA as an organization says, okay, how can we really get these regs put with fidelity and really done 100%? It would be to almost like the CTE technical centers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them that are around the state. It's saying, let's get the same thing for school counseling. Let's get these centers, these regional support centers put together throughout the state to help with that training, to make sure that there are materials to facilitate the communication between schools and regional field representatives. You know, we're asking for 100,000 on that, a minimum of 5 regional field representatives to provide localized professional development to kind of come into districts in those regions and really say, this is how you do a comprehensive school counseling program. This is how you do an advisory board. This is how you do those individual progress reports. This is how you get that school counseling program put together and put on your website. Really kind of getting into the nitty gritty, especially because when I think about what we do in a day-to-day, it's like you want us to do this too. How are we going to get this all done? So it's setting aside those professional development days and getting really qualified people to kind of come in and get to the meat and potatoes of it and say, this is how you do it. So if we could get support for that, we feel that would be a great way to kind of get that focus in. Require 175 continuing teacher and leader education hours for certified school counselors. We are a profession that does not require it. And when I think about the changing cycle of issues that students are faced with and the things that are thrown at us, you guys know, you can look at your colleagues that do attend professional development and those that don't. And if we're not staying in the know of the new things coming up, it's really hard to do our jobs and appropriately advocate and support our students. So while most school counselors are doing it, not all are. And if we're going to talk about keeping our profession where they should be and holding accountability for ourselves, we need to continue to develop ourselves professionally and make sure we have the knowledge to support our students. Taking a crosswalk of the New York State Learning Standards with the school counseling student learning standards, the ASCA mindsets and behaviors, looking at setting up curriculum lessons, which we actually already kind of have started doing as an organization on a small scale. And then being able to give districts counseling programs assessment and feedback. This is where you're really great. This is where you're lacking a little bit. This is where we see you need improvement. And this is how we can help you. So this would be given out when you go to a visit. You'd talk to it as a group. You'd share a story about it. And then you'd leave it with the legislator or their aides so that they could then follow up with questions that they may have. I don't know how I moved this menu bar. There we go. Then the next one, I don't know if I'm going to do these in the right. We have equitable access to the collective care team. I think it's going to be this one. Yes, beautiful. Okay, so we call on policymakers to create a bill that sets aside appropriate funds to support adequate collective care teams across New York schools. A collective care team is composed of school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors, and school nurses. Based on my meetings with the presidents of the other state associations across New York, we've come up with what the recommended ratio is, right? Now, we all talk about these ratios because legislators, people, they want a number. We all know in reality, when we do our work day to day, there is a danger to that number, right? And the Nurses Association in their most recent position really kind of shied away from that ratio. Originally, I think it was 1 to 750, but the reality of it is that's if you're talking about a general education population with not any real medical needs, right? They've now changed their position because you'll see that all the other organizations, we put kind of like a number. School nurses have said, okay, enough with the ratio. they're fluid and they depend on the variety of factors, most importantly, the complexity of the healthcare needs of their student population. We've continued as organizations to keep a number with the caution that use of ratios, you need to be careful, right? There's no one size fits all formula in addressing the needs of students, their families, and the surrounding communities. Sometimes you need smaller ratio. Sometimes you can get away with a larger ratio, but the reality is each district, when we're talking about these numbers, you have to look at each district, what the factors are affecting that district, and make sure that you have members of this team to support the needs of all students and make sure everyone's getting the help that they need, right? We see New York State Council of School Superintendents found 52% increase in mental health services. So mental health is at the forefront, right? We're seeing students struggling all over the place. And the goal of this collective care team would be to facilitate social, emotional, and physical well-being, provide effective services that are coordinated across a continuum of care, integrating schools, families, and community providers, creating a safe and supportive climate to ensure student learning, and address the mental health needs of all students, right? Not every student needs intense one-on-one counseling. Not every student is going to need necessarily groups. Some students will be okay with just getting that set of preventative soft skills. Hey, let's create these skills, develop them, and put them in your toolbox. We don't know what we're going to get in each caseload, right? So by having us all there ready, we can address anything that might come up. So that's what we're kind of saying. Hey, you need to look at schools, and we need to start making sure that all schools are equipped with the school nurses to identify psychosomatic things that are coming in, or to kind of say to the counselors, hey, it's something going on here. Something doesn't look right. Let's look in this deeper. Your school counselors to be doing those tier 1 interventions, really looking at the masses, identifying, and in collaboration with your social workers, identifying kids that are struggling and not really getting it. And then getting that group work done with your social workers, and then getting the individual attention needed by school psychologists to make sure students are getting everything they need in schools. Right. So that's a whole package. And we really need to start putting an emphasis on schools having us all, not having one or the other. The next thing we really talked about, and I think this is across the board, is universal school meals. So for a period of time during COVID, everybody got free lunch and free breakfast. And everybody was equal. Everything was kind of right in the world when it comes to school lunch. Think about the anxiety that your lower income students have that get free lunch, that they go to the cafeteria and they can't purchase snacks, or they won't have a meal. And that makes them stand out, especially in the junior high level. Why can't we do universal school meals? Why can't we, if we were able to do it for 2 years during COVID, why can't we provide free meals for all? So one of the things that we are fighting for, along with several other organizations, right, Bob? I think the PTA also is on the universal school meals for all public school students.
It's PTA is School Boards Association, NYSSCA. Yeah, everybody's on this one.
If we were able to do it, why not continue it? And we're going to get to this a little bit later, but it's oh God, I'm blanking. One House bill, not one house.
That's it.
What's the term, Bob? Is it one house?
Yeah, well, yeah, we
Okay,
got that.
so, and we'll get into that a little bit later, what a one house bill is, but the universal school meals actually has been slated for a one house bill. So there's momentum with this. And we kind of think that this one really might see some movement this year. So that's a good thing. The final thing that we're really looking at is, hold on. All right, support certified school counselors in each high school, concentrating on creating, bolstering, and administering access to early college and P-Tech programs. For those of you that have had some experience with this, we're really talking about programs that are giving you the opportunity to get access to enough college credits to maybe walk out with an associate's degree and then transfer in to a college or university and continue to work on that bachelor's degree, or having the experience in a technical area of getting the work and getting internships and getting the coursework to be able to walk out and have those practical skills, qualifications, and credentials to secure rewarding careers in technology-based industries. We all know the barriers that exist for students once they leave high school. right? There are a lot of kids in New York State public high schools that once they leave high school, they're not able to complete programs. They might start them, but they cannot complete them, whether it be for a lack of academic strength, study skills, financial constraints. Kids are going in, but they're not necessarily coming out. So how do we help them achieve that? And one of the things that's kind of up in the air, and one of the things people have been pushing for, is this creation of these P-TECH or early college programs while they're still in high school, free of cost, eliminating those barriers, giving students access to these experiences so they can kind of get a head start. So the overall cost of that education is not as large because you're only looking at those final 2 years, right? They're coming in with having experience to that coursework and being able to develop a set of skills in an environment where they have the support and nurture and nature of everything you get in high school to be successful, to set up those preventative measures so that when you have to manage your time and you have to study and you have to juggle, you're able to do that and be more successful. So you're able to develop those skills earlier on so that when you do graduate, you can walk straight into the world of work and be successful and have those skills that when you look at any survey that's out there, they're saying kids are not coming out of high school with the technical skills they need to be successful in college or the world of work. So we are looking at saying, hey, we need to start looking at this and have counselors that are focused on this and have programs in schools across the state of New York that give students these opportunities to have these experiences if they choose to have them. They're not mandating it for all, but saying, hey, here's an opportunity to work on your associate's degree while you're still in high school. Here's an opportunity to get involved in a P-TECH program to kind of support you and give you what you need to walk out and do the world of work in those technology-based careers. There is, by 2024, there's 16 million jobs that will be created in this new collar working, right? How are we preparing them for that? So this one really says, let's start looking at the programs that are going to prepare kids for the new world of work that's out there. That's pretty much our asks when we're talking about the things that we're looking to do. The things that we're saying to legislators, this is what we want you to get behind, are those 4 things, right? This is a full implementation of the commissioner regulations, equitable access to that collective care team, universal school meals, and certified counselors to concentrate on those early college and P-TECH programs. So when you're going and you're meeting, these are the things that we're looking at. Okay, a lot of information.
And one of the purposes of those 4 things that we put together is to focus our activities, is to focus our interest in a particular year. We have 1,000 things that we could ask for, but it's good to focus every year. And these are as a result of our advocacy and public policy meetings in our committee, who've come together and sat around diner tables and done various things to come up with these ideas. And so this is this year's group. I'm going to go into some real quick, we'll talk more about that later, but and those are all going to end up on our website in the next couple of days on our advocacy toolkit page. So just real quick, seventh grade social studies. This is our government structure. We'll talk about how that relates to the budget in a second. Executive branch, about, these are the people we deal with, are people who we elect. Legislative branches are our assembly and Senate. We put judicial branch because sometimes the legislative branch and the executive branch don't always agree on like budget items, and it ends up in court. And so that's where the judicial branch comes in terms of the budget. Here's the budget cycle. The executive branch agencies, including NYSSCA, New York State Education Department, makes budget preparations during this period of time, in the summertime and fall. If you get to go to Board of Regents meetings, which are really exciting, the second Monday and Tuesday of each month, you can do them online now. You don't have to go to Albany. You'll hear them talking about their budget proposals during the late fall, and they talk about budget proposals all the time. They get reviewed during this time of year, September, October, December, as the different executive departments puts it together. The governor always makes a speech in early January about here's our budget. It goes to the legislature. The legislature in the last few years has come out with what they call one-house budgets, a budget from the Senate and a budget from the Assembly about whether they agree or disagree with what the governor has asked for. And there's always disagreements and there's always agreements. We'll talk about that in a second. And then by the end of April, the budget's supposed to be passed. So in this period of time in March, this is like, I mean, if you're watching the local news, this one's saying that this, and this assembly person is saying this, and this, and the governor is saying this, there's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And in the background, you know, there's a ton of negotiation going on in regard to budget items. And you hear all kinds of stuff. We're mostly concerned with the education budget, but you'll hear things on the bail reform and so on and so on. It's all part of the action. So that's the budget cycle. When you start talking about where the education money comes from, it's not much is federal money that runs your school. Only about 2% actually runs your school. Sometimes you get Title I funding, Medicaid funding, other federal funds in your schools. There was a flurry of extra money during COVID and so on, but it's not a very big piece. State budgets, about 40% of the state budgets are higher ed in K-12. So a big hunk of state budgets every year are based on education. The second biggest piece is healthcare, like Medicaid and so on. You know, parks, I mean, I like to go to the park, but the government's not spending much money on it. Local budgets, 52% of local budgets are spent on schools as well. So your counties and so on, it's 52% of general funding disbursements around the country are spent on schools. Well, schools are a big part of everybody's tax dollar. And back to the budget cycle, we are in this place right now where people are negotiating. I put up the New York City budget cycle because it's a little bit different, and we're concentrating on working with New York City these days. It starts a little later. It seems to be reactive some to what the state says. So right now we are in April and the mayor has just submitted his executive budget. In the state, the governor submits that in January. So this is reactive a bit to what the city is finding that they're going to get from the state. Let's put it that way. City council does the same thing. They work between April and June, negotiating with the mayor. Last year there was big negotiations around school funding. It was a big deal. And the city council has committees just like they do on the state level. They have an education committee, they have a higher ed committee, and so on. In the city council in New York City, and those are our pressure points when we start working and lobbying with New York City. Is those different committee members. New York City is interesting in that they have term limits. 40% of everyone on the city council is new. We're just elected in the last election because they have, I think it's a 4-year term limit on city council. I could be wrong, but they turn over pretty quickly. There's a lot of new people on the different committees and so on. And then they vote by the end of June to adopt a budget. Okay, we were talking about one house budgets. Okay, and this just came out. I got this from the New York State School Boards Association yesterday, and I plugged it into a slide. And what they'll say with their house budgets, so they make budgets based on reacting to what the governor said. And so the governor wanted a 3% increase in foundation aid, which is the majority of your school district funding, and they agreed. They reject high impact tutoring foundation aid set aside. So the governor had set aside a few millions of dollars for high impact tutoring foundation aid from this foundation aid, and they rejected that. I think they wanted, I don't know the rest, I don't know the whole story, but I think they wanted more money specifically set aside for high impact tutoring. I'm not sure what this means. Reject the proposed extension of duplicative school building budget reporting. Not sure what that means. Okay. Two of ours, they agree with. Both houses include funding for universal school meals, higher investments in CTE by raising BOCES aidable salary cap and increasing special service aids for non-component district. Those are districts that don't belong to BOCES. And everybody's talking about looking at the foundation aid formula. They talk about that all the time at Board of Regents meeting. The foundation aid formula is there's this formula in the background that determines how much money each individual school district's going to get every year. So that's what the one house budget is. So these budgets, the Senate and the Assembly now are negotiating with the governor to come up with whatever the final budget is going to be to vote on by the end of March. Okay, quickly, let's see. Turning pieces of paper here.
And really the key on this one really was about more, and we talked about this in the summer, and we're all aware of it. You're in districts where there were stimulus and recovery funds pumped through the school districts as a result of COVID. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when that money was pumped through months ago, schools had to decide how they were spending the money. They had to write it up and they had to submit it before they got approved for the funds. So now that the money's coming out and they're getting audited, hey, did you spend it the way you said you were supposed to? It's already been slated to things. And while we would have hoped that they would have slated it towards positions, a lot of districts said, oh, we can't slate this towards positions because it's not sustainable. The government's hope was that they were going to put it towards things like that. And then they would find a way to kind of include that in their budgets and be able to find the money to sustain those positions long term. As that money is winding down and things are changing, we're seeing that districts that did put in positions and didn't necessarily put that into their budgets, you're starting to get excessing happening across the state. And that's what we hoped didn't happen. The key in this one is districts were supposed to get public input in where this money went. They were supposed to have public opinion meetings. They were supposed to speak to their communities. And I don't know how many of your districts did that. Now districts are being asked, hey, where's your attendance sheets from those public forums? Where are the attendance sheets from the activities that you ran? And a lot of district offices are saying, oops, and then trying to find places where they did it, right? And Bob, you say all the time, you don't see a lot going on in Central Islip other than a new turf field, new vehicles. You're not so sure that money went where it probably should have gone.
And the where it should have gone is based on what the community wants to have happen. And this goes back to Kim's presentation. She happens to be a school board member in the district where she lives, but school board members listen to PTAs. They listen to the population because those are the people who vote for them. One of the hard things to do as a resident is knowing exactly when the meetings are going to be. And some districts are better at advertising meetings and so on than others. And unless you're tapped into, like, I'd say the PTA is a great place to be tapped in. They're going to tell you when those meetings are going to occur. They're going to say, hey, this committee meeting or this meeting regarding stimulus is happening on this or that day. Strangely enough, and someone said it already, you can join any PTA you want. I joined the PTA where my grandkids go to school. So I know when all the Senator Marich's PTA meetings are. I have no idea or in their board meetings are because the Senator Marich's PTA tells me. I don't really know when this Central Islip ones are because I'm not tapped into. Maybe I need to join the one here. And so that's one of the challenges of just being a resident, especially if you don't have a kid in school, is knowing when those meetings are going to occur. We would hope, and we hear stories around the state about different districts who made different decisions, like Yonkers, for example, spent a lot of stimulus money on social workers, psychologists, and school counselors. Other districts spent a lot of money on security cars and new fields and great looking fence outside the school, something like that. I've heard armed guards are being hired in some districts. So it's an interesting challenge to make things happen. But this ship has kind of sailed, but it was a challenge. So we're at that point. It's almost past the point, at least, where I know that school district budgets are being developed right now, and they're all going to be voted on in May, which comes up in another calendar on another slide.
So then we get into that advocate definition again. And Kim showed this same definition during her slides also, right? So that advocate is a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. But part of that advocacy thing is that relationship and that connection, which is the long term, right? That's the marathon, not the sprint. That's the culture and climate, not the event. So being tapped into these meetings, being tapped into this information, you get the opportunities to be aware of things that might be happening. And then you're able to be present in the moment and advocate and use your voice to kind of say, hey, these are things we should be seeing happening, or these are the things we'd like to see happening, or hey, this is my opinion. So if we go to the next slide, we talk about ways that you can advocate, right? Because we talked earlier in the presentation things that NYSSCA is doing as an organization. But when we talk about, and also when we got to the healthcare worker bonus, a lot of the stuff that we've done, we've kind of hit barriers. And a lot of the work needs to be done grassroots on local levels. So things that you can do, support a cause in your local community, ask for the change, raise awareness on why the change needs to happen, right? I can come out and say, I want more school counselors, but why do I want more school counselors? So I have to do less work? No, so my programs can be more impactful so that I have time to do my preventative stuff, so I can do my classroom lessons and go in and give a soft set of skills to students that when they are faced with crises, they have a toolbox to reach into and pull out and be able to be more successful, right? So that I can do more parent workshops on the college application process or filling out financial aid forms, so that I can do workshop sessions with my students, maybe on essay writing or how to prepare for an interview. Our time is limited and they have us doing a variety of things, but figure out what the cause is, ask for the change and raise awareness, because as Kim pointed out, a lot of people do not know what we're doing, do not know why we need the changes, do not know why we need that whole collective care team, do not understand that we're all trained differently. And yes, we all do some type of counseling or some type of support, but it's very individual and unique. And we all have a specific set of skills that makes us necessary for all. So when we talk about advocating for a change, steps, you want to identify a problem. We want to get additional information about the problem, identify the stakeholders that it affects or that can help you make that change, research the advocacy or the history of the problem, identify the institutional environmental barriers, develop an action plan, and set goals and develop accountability measures. So I have, at Valley Stream, we have a lot of AP courses that we offer, one of which is AP Chemistry. AP Chemistry at North, the enrollment was dwindling. The teacher decided they wanted to get the enrollment up. She went to Syracuse University over the summer to do a super chemistry course. She got trained in it, she came back, they combined the courses in the AP and the super at the same time, so that students could pay for the Syracuse University credits, and then they'd also have to take the AP exam to get the AP credits. Our current district policy only weights AP courses, does not weight college level courses. Students went into the class has been like its third or fourth year of running. Hasn't really been an issue because every group of kids that enrolled paid for the Syracuse credits, those that could afford it and wanted to, and they also sat for the AP exam, so they got the weighting. This year's group of kids and last year's group of kids, some of them didn't want to sit for the test also. They felt like it was too much, it's too much testing, you know, the whole spiel. They went to the teacher, they went to the board, and over the course of 2 years and persistence and looking into the history of the way the policies were and who they'd have to contact to change those policies, they showed up at several board meetings with a very outlined action plan of why they felt that the credits should be weighted for college courses as well as AP courses, talking about the instruction, the work they had to do. They then got invited to our education committee with the board, which then took their findings along with me being present, kind of having a conversation with them, to then go to the policy committee. And we're now going to go on the first review of also weighting college courses. These are a group of high school seniors that got upset about something. There was a problem. They got the information. They found the stakeholders. They researched the history of why. And a lot of things in Valley Stream is because we've always done it that way, right? That's the answer. Why? Because that's the way we've always done it. Nobody's challenged it. So they brought information. They identified the key people, and they got the policy to change. Now, they're not going to reap the benefits of that weighting because the policy isn't going to be put into effect until they graduate, but they were able to advocate for a change that benefited the group, the entire Valley Stream. If a bunch of seniors in high school can do this, so can we. It's just a matter of following the steps and doing the work to see the results we want to see. And yeah, it's frustrating. And at times they wanted to quit and give up, but they persisted and they got the change they wanted to see. No, they're not gonna reap the benefits of it, but other kids will. So what we want to break down for you guys now is how do we get there? So when you guys registered, we gave you link. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to give another quick example. And the problem can be identified from a lot of different people. Okay, in the district where I worked, we identified the problem, and it was a couple of the department chairs identified the problem of who gets into honors level classes in 7th grade, who gets into advanced accelerated level classes in 7th grade, and because they found that there were some racial issues in terms of who were in those classes. To be blunt, all the honors level classes were white kids, and the non-honors level classes weren't. And so we looked at additional information. The stakeholders were the kids and the parents. There wasn't really any advocacy history behind it. The institutional barriers were purely using test scores, gatekeeping test scores. Coming out of 5th grade, you had to have a certain IQ score. You had to have a certain state test score. You had to have a certain Terra Nova score at that time, and a teacher recommendation coming out of 5th grade to end up essentially in AP classes in high school, because you had to get through those gates. And so we developed an action plan. And the department chairs started saying, why don't we use another measure? Why don't we see who's doing really well in social studies, who's doing really well in science, who's doing really well in math and in English in 6th grade, and maybe recommend those kids for the accelerated and honors classes in 7th grade instead of kids with great test scores in 5th and 4th grade. And so that's what we did. There was some pushback from teachers. There was some pushback from, we've always done it that way, people, done it that way, kids. We ended up having more honors sections in 7th and 8th grade than we did previously, which was like, oh, we can't have that many honor sections. It's like, why not? Let's give it a try. So that was just an example. I'm gonna stop talking now.
All right, so when you guys registered, we asked you to put down your legislators, right? And we give you a link to a site that'll help you identify who they are. That's the first step, right? If you have, and especially if we're talking about state level and even local level, because you could look at your local villages and stuff. I mean, it's a little bit easier to know who those representatives are. You want to identify who they are. Then once you know who they are, you're going to want to schedule a meeting. So they all do it a little bit differently. When you look up your state legislators on the website, they will have email addresses and phone numbers. Bob, you can go to the next slide. So you're going to call or email your representative to schedule an appointment. A lot of times in the past, I've called and they'll say, okay, what times are you looking for? They'll take it right there over the phone. We'll be in touch. Or they'll say, shoot an email out to us. Tell us who's going to be coming, what you want to talk about. You want to make sure that if you are going to talk about a specific bill or a specific topic, you give them that information ahead. You're going to tell them the purpose of your meeting, give them your information. And typically it'll take a week or two to meet, more because of the scheduling piece than anything else. Now, what we're finding is a lot of people are doing virtual meetings, not so much in-person meetings. So they're quicker to schedule. And you're actually getting the representative on the call with you. When you used to do it in person, a lot of times you'd get the aide, which wasn't a bad thing, because sometimes the aides would listen a little bit more intently and would have a personal connection, especially for us as school counselors. A lot of times the aides were younger students that were closer to just having left high school or college, and our causes actually spoke to them, and they really could relate to the frustrations that they were seeing, and they understood the problems a little bit better. So they took great notes and brought it back. But it's definitely great when you get the opportunity to sit with that legislator and really get into what's going on. So you send out that email, then they'll get back to you. You want to prep for your meeting, so you want to research the issue. Now, obviously, if you've picked an issue that you're going to advocate on, you know a little bit of that issue, the history, who the stakeholders are, who you need to contact. When we looked at the health worker bonus one, we said, okay, obviously our local people are going to represent us because we're the constituents and they want to be reelected. We also want to make sure we're looking at anybody on kind of the health and public policy committees. We want to talk to the health department. So we geared some of our messages more to those committee members besides just constituents, right? Certain issues when we're looking at educational things, we're going to make sure we target all the education committee members and the chair of that education committee. So when you're looking at the issue, you want to look and see what other committees might match that cause, and not only reach out to your local people, but also reach out to people on the committees that also are affiliated with those issues. Look and see, are there bills that are either, and what happens with bills a lot of times is somebody picks one up, they put it out, they work on it in committee. Sometimes it dies before it even gets to committee. Sometimes it gets to committee and it dies in committee. Sometimes it gets past committee, gets to the floor, and it just dies on the floor and it doesn't really get voted for. So at what point was there something, because a lot of times, and we have found that some have been floating around for years and they just don't have the right wording. And when we reached out to the offices, they're more than welcome to say, yes, let's work together in changing this wording and getting it picked up by more people. Because remember, you need to get supporters on both sides of the House, right? So you need the Democrats and you need the Republicans to kind of both support this to get it where it needs to go. So you want to understand the legislator you're going to see, what their voting record has been, because unfortunately, you may not align with the person that represents your district. Your beliefs might be a little bit different, but that person can still be an ally to you and can still help you advocate. So you want to make sure that you're going and knowing who you're going to meet with, because we've had many instances where we've walked in and we've been like hit with like, whoa, that's not who we expected to talk to. So you want to go in prepared. Develop a personal story. Melissa, you said it best. If you're going to have Kim talk, make sure you tell people to have tissues, because when she shares her why, it hits your heartstrings and you're like, oh my God, yes. That personal story, that connection to what you're asking for makes the difference, right? It takes it from that elevator pitch to something of value. So you want to make sure that you have that personal story. Then right before your meeting, you want to confirm it. Typically, you'll get an email from the office saying, hey, we just want to confirm that we're still on and that these are the people that are meeting. If anyone additionally is meeting, please let us know. So you want to make sure they know who's coming, what the purpose of the meeting is, and the things you're going to be talking about. If in your research you found something else that would add to the conversation, let them know that. We're not looking to catch anybody off guard. There's no gotcha here. We're looking to share information, educate, and hopefully find a commonality that we can align with to get things moving in the right direction for the benefit of kids. I don't know anybody that's not okay with fighting for the benefit of kids. If they are, they really don't have a place in our society. Then we go to step 5, the meeting. When you get to the meeting, you want to tell your story. You're going to start the meeting with thanking them. So we had my legislative breakfast last weekend. Assemblywoman Solange was there, and I've met her several times throughout the years with our advocacy with the PTA. When I went up to her, the first thing I did was thank her for the foundation aid. Thank you so much for the work you've been doing for these years, because we finally got that foundation aid. And I know it's something that you've been in support of and you've been actively fighting for us. So I want to thank you for the work that you've done. She went, oh my God, thank you so much. People don't thank them. They don't say, hey, we know that you're working hard. They come and say, well, why didn't you this? And why didn't you that? And why didn't you this? Start off by thanking them for something that they did. It catches them a little off guard, look, we're counselors. We know how to get people comfortable talking, right? So it gets them into like, oh, okay, this might be a different type of conversation. If you're asking for money, justify the money, right? How many times I tell my counselors, please don't come to me and tell me I have to go to administration and ask for more counselors unless you have valid reasons why we need more counselors. Because if you're going to say you want more counselors because you want less students, I can't go in with that, because they're going to say you're trying to work less. And that's not what you're trying to do. Let's get to the heart of it. Why do you need the money? What's going to be done with that money? And what are the additional opportunities and services that are going to happen because of the money? It's not just about avoiding cuts, but providing new opportunities. Use data. That's facts. You can't question facts. You can't question data. Here it is. These are the facts. This is the data. So anything that you have, if you can back it up with numbers, it makes your argument only stronger. Make sure you thank them. And the last thing, and this we learned from the PTA, when you're done with your whole pitch and you're going over everything, we always say, okay, now do me a favor. Tell me, what can I do to help you? I'm not just here to ask you for something. What can I do to help you? A lot of times they're taken off guard. They don't really know what to say, that they're kind of like, oh no, maybe just those follow-up things. And then remind them, if you need me, in this folder of information we've given you is our contact information. Reach out to us. Anything that you need. The New York State School Counselor Association is there to help you. We're there to support you. We're asking for your support and your help, and know that we will return the favor, and we are here to support you when you need us. That begins that relationship, right? It's now symbiotic, right? I'm not trying to just take from you. I'm actually giving something back to you. Bob, you want to add anything to any of that?
Yeah, and you have to be efficient. Okay, you're gonna get 15, 20 minutes maximum. We had a half-hour meeting one day, and the only reason that it lasted that long is because the assembly person secretary came in and shut it down. She said, "Hey, assembly person, you have another meeting in 5 minutes with somebody else." He would have gone on all day, but we weren't allowed to talk in that meeting. Anyway, you have to be efficient. You have to get your points across, and tell your story, because they're really busy. They have lots of meetings, especially this time of year. There's essentially two kinds of meetings. This time of year, groups like us are going in with proposals. Proposals either that have to do with the budget, or proposals that have to do with policies. Other times of year, maybe in the summer, fall, and so on, before this time of year, it's a relationship meeting. It's like, hey, we haven't talked to you in a long time, or we've never met. We have some information regarding school counseling and school counseling association including information regarding the efficacy of having school counseling programs. We just wanted to spend some time with you and let you know about that. Those relationship meetings are really important too, to open the door. So the next time you want something, they've already met you. And so this time of year is more about asking for stuff, and during the summer and fall and stuff, when it's not so busy. And they'll be home in their districts. They got a little time. Nobody's got a tie on anymore. It's a little less busy at that time of year. That's all.
All right, and we're gonna see to you that when you go into those meetings, you're gonna kind of script that experience. So, and Bob, you can go to the next slide. That's fine.
Okay.
So for those of you that signed up and said, hey, you'd be willing to meet with legislators, after this training, we're gonna set up those meetings, and we're gonna set up, we're gonna group you together in groups of people who are in the same areas. And then you're gonna meet ahead of time to say, you do the intro, you're going to talk about this proposal, you're going to talk about that proposal, so that when you go in, it's scripted, but it's scripted in a way that seems natural and kind of, it helps you maximize your time, get your points across, figure out your stories, your whys, and be able to kind of get across the information you need to get across. You also, if you're in person, you give them a folder of information. If you're online, you'll pop in the chat the links to all the stuff that you want to share with them, the information you want to share. So what we want to do now is we want to give you an opportunity to go into smaller groups. And we're going to ask you, first, we're going to ask you to think of an issue as a group, an issue that you'd like to advocate. If you were going to a legislator with this issue, what are you asking them for? And why are you asking for it? We're going to give you about 5 minutes in the groups. Bob, we're at 20 right now, so you want to do 4 groups of 5?
Sure.
So we'll do 4 groups of 5. As a group, just come up with an issue, figure out if you were at a legislator, what would you be asking for, and why are you asking for it? And then we're going to come back as a collective, and we're going to share our scenarios.
And
Okay.
they're going to be random groups, so you just end up with 4 or 5 other people. So let's go. Ellie, I'm gonna set a timer.
Rebecca will have to finish. So write down my name. I'm gonna put my email in the chat, okay, Rebecca?
Rebecca, you're muted still. All right. I
Okay.
hope you guys had good conversations. I know my group did. So what we're gonna ask you,
Lisa, thank you.
we're gonna share out the issue that you identified in your group, what you were gonna ask the legislator for, and your why. So group one, you want to go first?
Do we
their
know
group-
who had numbers?
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah.
did. Oops.
Wait, listen, the thing, I know we ended up in group two. I don't know if I saw group one. So maybe there wasn't. Maybe it was 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know we were group two.
No, there was a 1. There was a 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think we were group one, Sally Ann and Justin and I.
Go ahead, Mary.
Or we each had a variety of issues, but I think they all fell under the collaborative care team that we need personnel. Justin is the only elementary counselor between 5 buildings, and Sally Ann with no school nurse. So I think it all falls under collaborative care team. But
All right,
Sally
what
Ann and Justin, jump in if you'd like.
Yeah, so I know for me personally, to go to 5 different buildings every single day and try to continue a caseload, follow up with the new needs that are in the building. We're also doing transition lessons for 5th grade on a weekly basis. We push in, so that's about 2 hours dedicated to just pushing lessons every day, and not having like a chance to do any follow up, a chance to just stay in communication and come back the next day and put it to practice. It's more just hoping that they try it on their own and then get feedback after. But we can see between parents' conversations how thankful they are for even the one day from teachers' conversations. But I always tell them if we could try to bring that into a conversation about why we need more of us. If there was more of us, then there would be more support in the building. If you're used to it for just one day and it's beneficial, if you get it for 1 to 2, 3 days a week, how much more could it be?
Okay. Great. So that's your why, right? That's your story, your personal story. That's the why. And then we're asking for more staff, right? Because when we take that collective care proposal, we're saying we need to make sure these ratios are this, if not more, depending on the groups that we're looking at. And that's what we're asking for. All right, group two. I was in group two. James, go ahead.
So Justin and I work for the same district. So we had a very similar concern about equitable access. We are overwhelmed by sheer numbers and need. And as a result, so are our nurses, which Cindy Cinto is a school nurse on here, and she discussed all that they have to do on top of receiving whatever we send or teachers send or administrators send their way. And in addition to the school nurses being overwhelmed, so are our social workers and psychologists who get all the overflow, all the follow-ups. And we're a team of, together with the nurses, we're a team of 8 for 1,100 students. So.
And James shared, they're seeing ambulances at the building daily for
Daily.
students who are attempting to die by suicide. And he's in a middle school level. So when you talk about an ambulance outside of the middle school every day for students who are either attempting to die by suicide or showing up drunk under the influence of drugs or alcohol, there are not enough social workers to do all the group work that they have to do. There are not enough psychologists to help support. And there are definitely not enough nurses to do the required work, as well as the stuff that they're getting handed in the situation that kids are showing up in. So for us, that's that personal story, and that's why we need to make sure that we have those ratios, if not more than, to make sure we're meeting the needs of the students that are showing up at our door daily, because they are not okay.
And neither are their parents.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Okay, so group 3, what'd you come up with?
Is that you, Rebecca? That could
I
be.
thought we
Why
were-
don't you go?
Okay, no problem. I thought we were 4, but I am happy to go. We are, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we are ready. Our ask, my ask, we were the perfect double. perfect partners. My ask was for elementary counselors. We are in desperate need of elementary school counselors. As a director in a district very near to Kelly, and also as a director in Nassau County and a high school counselor for 24 years. Mr. Rotunda, I believe you said that you worked in South Huntington, which is where my kids currently attend.
Ah,
So also, I just have to plug the fact that I have so many feelings that relate to the fact that they came out so public about having armed guards. And as a parent in that district and really not involved very much because I'm so involved in my district in Nassau County, that kind of blindsided me as a parent. And so I think that exemplifies the world that we're living in right now. And I think that we have so many leaders that are trying to Band-Aid as opposed to use opportunities for money and grants in a preventative manner. And that starts in elementary school. And, I can speak in South Huntington, not in my home district, they could certainly add a couple of teams in the middle school level and let kids stay after school and keep them in a structured environment that might help create pathways that are more productive. But in getting back to, the assignment at hand, elementary counselors could be really vital in all of this. And in Malvern, we don't have that issue going on, but we do have a lot of others, and we don't have elementary counselors, and we don't even have full-time in our buildings social workers because they have to service the private schools and all of the kids that go to those private schools that are not Malvern taxpayers. Because the private school is in our community. And so every time I ask for more support or personnel in these areas, very often the response is, well, what are you going to give up? And the principals aren't having that conversation, K-12, because they're not getting what they need. Forget about what they're giving up now to get a social worker or a counselor because they feel like everything's under control. But we know that it's not. And our caseloads are high, and so we need more. So Lisa agreed to be my guest speaker from the NYSSCA standpoint to appeal to my board and my community. I actually think the board would be very supportive of this, but I need the buy-in from the leadership team and the superintendent in order to make it work. So we need to get them on board. So a couple of things that I thought of coming up with would be data, bringing in a current elementary counselor to complement what Lisa would share from the perspective of the association and why elementary counselors are so vital. And a school counselor who's experienced. I know that there are a few in comparable districts in Nassau County to share what it was like for them and what the difference in the data has been in the time that they've implemented their program and rolled out a full-time elementary counselor. And I think at the same time, we have to talk about reducing caseloads and not about less work, but about implementing programs more thoroughly and impacting all students equally.
Awesome. So, and like when I look at that, I'm hearing like a campaign on the real local level, but I think it's awesome, right? It's saying this is the issue. Right? I don't have the elementary councils I have. My cases are not where they should be. I don't have the collective care team to support the needs. And what are the people that I pull in to talk to those key stakeholders to share that why, right? Throw in a few community members to share their story about either the benefits they've had with the services they've gotten or the close calls that they had with not having access to the services that they need. And I think you got a winning campaign there.
I love that. That's a really great idea.
All right, group 4, or there was another group that we also had. I think, was there another group?
I don't know what our number was, but
all right, so if your group didn't go, then you guys go now.
It's funny, we all have the same issue. We were like in group 1. That's the exact conversation we had. I don't know, I was in a group of 5, but only 3 of us were speaking. There were a social worker, a nurse, myself. I don't know what the other 2 ladies do, but we had the same exact issue. It was more about more. always needing more, having a problem with ratios, and just sitting in front of legislators and speaking to them about, talking about, educating them about why ratios are not effective, and we understand their need for them, because how do you ask for something that's intangible? But we have to describe why there's always a need for more, like James was saying. Like we're not doing what we could be doing, and look at what we could be doing, and look at what we're actually doing and what's falling by the wayside because we're so overloaded. And that overload, just educating them, that overload is different in different places. You can have the same amount of personnel at this school, but it's going to look and feel drastically different. And then the personal stories, talking about the CPS referral and the ambulance and the girl who's sitting in class, I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my arms, because she's high, and then the ambulance coming and taking it. It's just intense. It's intense.
Right. Yeah. And look, in our school, we've had to use Narcan on several students because they're showing up, and it's been, if we didn't have it, they would not be okay. So we're
Right.
definitely at a crisis. And one of the things, Rebecca and I are in the directors group together at Nassau, in Nassau County. And one of the things that one of our other directors had brought up, which, because Kathy, I'm seeing your note in the chat about the Region 1 advocacy group, was seeing if we could get schools to give us the opportunity to do either a half day or a full day workshop on advocacy, and really dig into this and get professional development for all of the school counselors, all of the directors on doing our regs with fidelity, right? Taking that comprehensive school counseling program, making sure that we have the counselors on all the levels, making sure we have the resources to create the lessons or have the network to share lessons, because some districts have done such a phenomenal job. Lisa's in Copeg. She's been an elementary counselor for how many years, Lisa?
Too long.
32.
Right, so
Right,
you talk about
girl.
32 years of lessons and experience on the elementary level, taking Brentwood, which has a phenomenal elementary program as well, and taking all those resources as a county, Nassau County and Suffolk County as a region, and really letting administrators know this is why this work is so important. You need to give us this release time for this workshop so that we can create campaigns like the one we're talking about, Rebecca, for your district. To let the rest of the stakeholders know why it's so important to have that whole group. And hey, let's see if we could throw the nurses, the social workers, psychologists in to really look at developing collective care teams across the region. And then taking that model and throwing it to other regions throughout the state of New York, right? Mary, your region, doing a similar event there, but saying on a state organization level, how do we get into developing that personal story? Because that's the key there, right? The why. The image of an ambulance pulling up daily to a middle school,
Mhm.
right?
Take a picture. Take a picture.
And Kelly,
yeah.
Yeah, I was in, Western Suffolk had their spring conference yesterday, and LIPAD was there. And he just had some incredible stories too. So pulling, with that ambulance stuff and talking about how they could support and what they're seeing, I think there's a piece there that we could tap into that's maybe missing.
Yep. And that's what things like this
For data.
that involvement is, that's what gets the momentum. That's what gets the movement, the why. When you start, a girl's in a classroom screaming, I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my arms, because she's high. A kid falling down the stairs and getting administered Narcan in the middle of a high school because they're under the influence of something, because they can't cope with life and they're showing up to school a mess. These are not after school specials. These are what we're seeing in our schools. And making people aware of that and sharing those stories and giving us the ability to craft those stories in a way where we still preserve the confidentiality of our families and our students, but we're able to make the key stakeholders see why this is so important. And you cannot continue to do either or. You need that whole team. You need that whole group. You need those support services, those trainings, to be able to do what we have to do, right? Sally, absolutely. Without a nurse in your building, you have to call an ambulance because you don't know what was going on with the kid. You don't have a medical professional to help diagnose. Yes, this is okay. No, this isn't okay. This could be handled here. It's a scary thing. We're talking about other people's children, right? We're talking about life and death. We've been given this huge responsibility to take kids in and make sure they come back home okay. And each day it's getting harder and harder to be able to do that. Right. So when we talk about, we have this slide, the next item, Bob, you're not sharing anymore. We have this school counselor slide, right? And what people think school counselors do. And there's the one with what my friends think I do with their feet up on a desk hanging out, what the parents think I do, which is a kid laying on a sofa, right? That's not what a school counselor does. School counselor isn't doing intensive counseling like that, right? Our psychologists are. Our social workers are doing kind of more of that intense work. What my colleagues think I do, I was sitting around tables, what society thinks I do, what my students think I do, and then what I actually do, right? A little bit of everything. And think about what we could do as a team with all the pieces of that team there. There would not be a single student that would not be touched in some positive way by a component or an aspect of a mental health system to make sure that they come in, they get preventative services, they get a set of tools and a toolbox to reach into throughout their K-12 experience and beyond. When we talk about why kids, they get into college, but they're not successful, they get into the workforce, but they're not successful, a lot of that has to do with not having appropriate coping mechanisms to deal with mental health stuff that comes up. Right? Getting slammed in the face by a life experience and having that ability to pivot, handle that, and pivot back to a day-to-day regular. I'm 46 years old, soon to be. And I know that I have a lot of friends that do not cope appropriately to life circumstance. We are a profession, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, school nurse, that can help students be able to get those skills so they can go on to be that next generation that is able to kind of address those things that happen, those life hurdles, and move on. So, local advocacy ideas for any time. Join your district level and building committees. And I know we think about all the stuff we do and we don't have enough time in a day. And it's a lot. But if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Bob's right. If you're not part of those conversations, they forget about you. They shouldn't, because we're key pieces, but they don't think about it. That meeting in August that talked about that healthcare worker bonus, they did not think to pull school counselors into it. We weren't on the table. We weren't part of it. We weren't at the table. Use ASCA's position. Skip monthly newsletters to families and staff with updates on your program. I know we think those are outdated. Newsletters are not outdated. Maybe make them virtual, share them out. Let people know what you're doing, brag, share the programs that you're running. One of the best things we've done at Valley Stream, and it hasn't taken on, we don't have 5,000 people coming. We have a couple 100 maybe across all 4 buildings, if we're lucky in the whole year, but we started wellness centers. And those wellness centers have my school counselors, our school social workers, our school psychologists, and they're doing a variety of things, right? We're showing how we are a team and a network. We're doing college application stuff. We're doing coping mechanism stuff. We're doing art therapy. We're doing music therapy. We're doing dog therapy. We're doing all the different things. We have the Central High School has a chef. They're showing how cooking and baking can help you relieve stress. It's coming up with different coping mechanisms. Use ASCA's position statements to help clarify your role within your school. How many of your administrators just don't get what we're supposed to do as school counselors, right? And we are different than school social workers. We're different than school psychologists. And without the school nurses, we don't tap into everything, right? We get a sense of stuff, but the school nurses get the kids coming in that they're like, there's something more going on here. You guys need to take a closer look at this. Be present during parent-teacher conferences. Maybe have scheduled appointments, maybe just be there. Let them see you. Get involved with your local PTO or PTA. Those parents are a force to be reckoned with. You have them on your side, and not just when there's something wrong, right? How many times we tell a counselor, make a relationship with a family, because when you have to make the call about something bad that happens, if they already know you're on their side, that call is not as bad. But if you haven't spoken to them all year long and you're just calling to say, hey, this came up, there's going to be an immediately knee-jerk defensive reaction. Have those relationships there so that when you need to call on them, it's like second nature. Publicize your efforts and activities on your district website, social media accounts. Let your community know what you're doing. We do a parent forum where we have We asked them to tell us topics they wanted to do monthly. We have this form. We started out maybe 5, 10 parents. We're up, depending on the topic now, 50, 60 parents are showing up. We're telling them, grab your friend, tell them to come. In a community where mental health is not an issue, right? Valley Street is a very diverse population, a lot of immigrants, a lot of cultures that do not believe in counseling. We have been able to kind of crack at that exterior and make it a little softer to say, well, let's maybe talk about what's going on. Let's share, let's have common experiences. I mean, it's given a lot of families a safe space to kind of, even if they don't agree with it, hear what this is all about, right? Maybe start to kind of decide, let me change this a little bit. Collect data on your program. I know data is an ugly word, especially in counseling. And I look at my counselors, I say, we need data. They go, how am I supposed to quantify what I do? Go to NYSSCA's model, look at the closing the gap results, use the spreadsheets that are there. No, you're not going to be able to capture everything you do, but you can look at one measure that you're going to track and then show in that annual board meeting presentation that's part of your advisory board that we're not all using. Show them what you're doing. Show why students are better because of the work we do and why they're better because of the work we do as a collective care team. We cannot do our work alone. Maybe we can, it's not as effective. The national, join NYSSCA. Stay up to date through NYSSCA's emails. If you're not a member of NYSSCA, join NYSSCA. Come on our Advocacy and Public Policy Committee. We're looking for more members. It doesn't have to be something, we're not all going to go up every weekend and do stuff like this, but maybe it's just logging on to a Board of Regents meeting and hearing what's going on. Maybe it's, finding out local events and helping attend professional developments. Know your local legislators, follow them on social media, see what's going on so that we don't find out after the fact that we weren't included in something that had we been just paying attention, we would have known earlier on, hey, wait a minute, that's happening and we're not a part of it and we need to be. Don't be afraid to be loud and stand up for ourselves. So many times we're so busy advocating for everybody else, we don't advocate for ourselves. And it's okay to say, you need us and you need to do more for us to keep us. I mean, one of the things we see at the directors meetings all the time, counselors don't know how to say no. So they throw this at you and they throw that at you and they throw this at you and you say, well, it's good for the kids. So okay. No, let's think about the things we're doing and be intentional on the things we're doing and make sure they're sending the message that we want to send about what we do as school counselors. They're sending the message about our role in this collective care team. And don't forget that there are other members of this team that also need to be represented. So if you feel impassioned and excited right now, great. Join our Advocacy and Public Policy Committee. We have monthly meetings. I have not been so great at them. We're trying to get better. When I did my presidency, I had kind of stepped down a little bit on the advocacy front. My presidency is winding down. Advocacy is coming back. And then what do you guys have for us? What questions? What do you want to know? What didn't we cover? What do you want to share?
I just want to say, Kelly, thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to sit and listen because you're inspiring, just because you're so passionate about this. I've sat through this before and I'm walking away with new ideas and new thoughts. And for me, I'm walking away with developing what will happen with more time, not just less students. What's going to happen when you have more time? Because less students means more time per the ones you have, right?
Yes.
So that means more classroom lessons, and that means more chances to teach skills to everybody, not just who's in crisis. So it's how you move away from being in crisis to being proactive when you have more time with each student and every student. The other piece was it's about every child deserves to have that counselor and deserves to have a big chunk of time with that person. So thanks again.
Yeah, I agree, Lisa. I think it's moving from a triage model to a preventative model.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say, Kelly, I'm sitting through this for the second time, and I love hearing that it's a marathon and not a sprint. I think so often, because we're always in a reactive mode, we always want things to happen quickly. And to replant the seed that there are things we can do, there are things within our control that we can help to make a difference, that we do have power in some ways, and that we can continue to work together to make things happen, but it's not going to happen overnight, is really important. But the collaboration is the key. And I love that there are social workers and psychs and nurses on today with us, because we couldn't do our job without them. We are in each other's offices, in each other's conversations and meetings together, and we'd be lost without them. So I appreciate the reminders and the refreshing.
Thanks, Mary.
I have a kind of fairly specific question actually right now,
Go
which
ahead.
is that the nurses have been looking at a bill that we have concern about, and we've been following it and formulating our thoughts, and what we would not like to see in this bill, what would need to be improved, things like that. And we just got a ping from we were doing like a legislative alert on the bill. It's been in education committee, and it says they're having a hearing on Tuesday. Has anybody, is that something that we're able to, I think we should be also reaching out immediately to our legislators to say how we feel about, we don't have a formulated, message from, letter from the organization, but as individuals reach our legislators. But as far as being a part of at least looking at, how is that accessed? Are we able to see what goes on in a hearing?
Some of the hearings are online these days, if you can find them. If you go to the committee, whatever it is,
Okay.
I know the ed committee ones are.
Yeah, it's
You go to-
education. committee.
Yeah, if you go to the committee, and is it Senate or Assembly?
It's Senate.
That's Senator Mayer. I think
Yeah,
that's the woman who I was speaking of before.
Right.
Ms. Ashido. Some of those are online.
okay.
I can't speak. I
What's
haven't
the
read-
bill?
Yeah, what's the bill?
So it's a bill, in brief, it's Senate 3129. It's been resurrected from the last session when it died. And it is to allow the training of non-medical persons, like not the nurse, but another
Okay.
staff member in the school, to administer emergency seizure medications to students whenever they're on school property when a nurse is not present. And so, and they're looking at it as like, well, we allowed that for epinephrine administration, and we allowed that for glucagon for people that are having a diabetic, like
And now Narcan.
comatose emergency. And now we want to allow people to do this. And there's some language in there about letting the students be able to carry their medicine and treat themselves, which is just not even possible. If you're in a seizure, you can't treat yourself. And then once again, it's like, we feel that there are assessment pieces to this where, maybe you can identify that a student had a seizure, but now who is going to monitor that student after the medication is given and determine that they're okay after that? These medications are made of Valium and, the benzodiazepine types of drugs.
Yeah.
There's carrying, people in the building carrying controlled substance, essentially. The accountability issues. So, it's just,
I would do what Bob said.
Go ahead.
I was what Bob said. I would reach out to the committee that's doing it. And then, Bob, do they do a list of who's testifying?
Yeah. If you go to, and I can't do it right now, but if you go to the committee, it'll say, the meetings, and it'll say who's testifying. And a lot of times they'll post the testimony.
Okay.
And if nothing else, your association should send a position. This
Well,
is what
yeah.
you may have done that already.
Well, we are working on this.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, we get this alert,
It
I
showed
got
up.
this alert yesterday that it's happening Tuesday.
Yeah,
And it's like, we're not there yet,
It's kind of that time of year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'd also request to see if you can get added to the testimony. I mean, the worst they could say is no.
Yeah.
But if they don't have somebody from a nurse organization testifying, I think reaching out and even calling them, calling mayor's office and saying, hey, we just got this alert from the Nurse Association and we have strong concerns, medical concerns. Is there a way to get on the list of to testify?
Okay.
The worst they could say is no, but at least they know you're there.
Thank
And
you.
And then
Bob
Bob,
knows-
I don't know if you saw the chat, but yours, the exit survey, you need permission to fill out. I don't know if when you did it, you
I
didn't.
don't remember how to do that.
I think you go to the
Cynthia?
one, you have to make it public to
Bob,
everybody.
What?
I was just able to get on, but I did it under my NYSSCA Region 1 and not my personal
Oh,
NYSSCA
weird.
email.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
You mentioned to do
Cynthia?
anyone with the link can do it. Go ahead,
If
Lisa,
you
sorry.
do, Cynthia, if you do get to testify,
Mhm.
Bob was able to do that, and we worked on the testimony. There's a whole format. You have to do like 15 minutes. You're allowed to talk for a certain amount of time, but you can give them paper that they can look through later on. So you're
Okay.
creating a document to give them, but you have to limit, okay, here's my 3-minute speech of the 15 pages I'm giving you.
Okay.
And so there's a little research that has to be done in that area, right, Bob?
Yeah, and it's really specific to the, okay, wait, I fixed the form. No, it says accepting responses. Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reset, if you change the permissions on the form, just put the link back out again, because maybe,
Okay, I'll do it. Hang on. Too many windows open.
because that might work. And then there was something.
Yeah, just in terms of testimony, I mean, that one was kind of interesting because they asked us to testify. In most cases, you have to ask to testify.
Right.
And so there's a form for every committee, and for every meeting where you can say, I want to testify. And sometimes they say, oh, you can always submit written testimony, whether you get the verbal one or not, but you can always submit written testimony.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll let anybody do that. And sometimes, even after the meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Kelly,
Yeah.
before we leave, can I put a plug in for
Yeah,
Bright?
for the new platform.
Yeah, for
That's what I
the
wanted to say. Yes, please do.
Well, just that. You've been, most of you as NYSSCA members have been receiving information about a new platform that we will be launching on the 20th. So you have access to get in there and create a profile. It's basically your NYSSCA, whatever you use to log into NYSSCA, that's what you will use to log into Bright. I always want to go Bright Spacers. No, that's
It's called NYSSCA.
Oh my God.
It's called NYSSCA Community.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Just NYSSCA Community. Bright
Yeah.
Space is what we use at the university. All right, never mind. Okay, but just pay attention. It's a wonderful tool for us to use, even when you start doing the advocacy work locally. It's the opportunity to work online with a group in your area who are NYSSCA members. Okay, this is a NYSSCA membership only benefit. Okay.
And Bob, the
I'm done.
link's still not working. I think you have to make it accessible to anyone who has a link. Naj, I
I
think.
thought I did, so.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I was there.
And if not, guys, what we'll do is if we can't get you to access it now, we will.
Yeah, we
send
know
an
who was
email
here. We
to
can,
you.
we know who's here. We can email you. Okay.
We'll
Yep,
email
yep.
you the exit survey, and really it's just asking you kind of for feedback on the presentation, anything you still have questions on, and was confirming to see if any of you would be interested in doing legislative visits so we could start scheduling those. And the hope would be to schedule those in the next 2 weeks, probably towards the later end of those 2 weeks, because I have to reach out to the legislators and try to set up appointments. I mean, you would be in a group, you wouldn't be alone, and we would speak to the positions that we shared with you today and the need for them to kind of be behind or support these ideas throughout the work that they do. We do have a few legislators, Hoyleman's office, who was putting forward something for a mental health day. They are definitely open to changing the language and including additional supports. Our fear, we did meet with them, our fear of that mental health day was, okay, so you take the day and then what? I mean, it's really being modeled after other states have created these mental health days, but our feeling was there should be some kind of follow-up. If I'm a student who takes a mental health day, do I now need to go see my school counselor? Do I need to set up an appointment with a school social worker or psychologist, or maybe somebody outside of school to help me address whatever it was that happened that made me say I needed that mental health day? So there was concern in that, that we were just kind of give a free access to use to not be in school without much follow-up into the why behind it. And just, again, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. I know Saturdays are precious. And the weekends go by way too fast. The weeks seem way too long. So we do appreciate you sharing your time with us. The meeting, I think our next advocacy meeting, which actually I think I have a conflict on that date, is supposed to be for Monday, the 29th of March. Bob, is that what the Monday is? I think that's what I have on my calendar. Hold
I
on, let me
think so. Calendar.
And I don't know, enjoy your weekends, I guess, if there's nothing else.
27th? 27.
27th is a Monday.
27th at 7 p.m. So we will send a link out for that to everybody who registered for this session. So you will get a link if you want to join. For